very good evening. It's the 23rd of July 2023. Welcome to the primetime news here on TV1. For the News First team, I'm Senaniga. Before we take a look at the stories that we've got for you this evening in detail, let's take a look at the headlines.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Durden's Hospital, dedicated to you.
Expedite the development of the Anuradhapura sacred grounds while giving priority to the development of the Mahaviharaya. 40 years since Black July, police fired tear gas to disperse a commemoration event in Colombo. Another commemoration in Borella also disrupted. Ministry of Health decides to make emergency purchases only with registered companies. Maximum retail price for fuel from next month. A statement from the State Minister. Farmers raise concerns about the project to develop the banks of the Senaniga Samudra.
News First headlines. Main sponsor.
Durden's Hospital, dedicated to you.
On to your top story this evening. President Ranil Wickremesinghe instructed officials to expedite the Anuradhapura Sacred Site Development Plan, giving priority to the Mahaviharaya Development Plan.
A discussion was held under the chairmanship of President Ranil Wickremesinghe on the Mahaviharaya Development Plan and Anuradhapura Sacred Site Development Plan at the Bomalu Viharaya in Anuradhapura. The Atamasthanathipati and Chief Sanganayaka of Nuwara Kalaviya, Most Venerable Pallegama Hemaratana Nayaka Thera, also joined the discussion.
Don't look at the
Anuradhapura in the same way as you would look at Hambantota and Monaragala. This land is more sacred and historic in comparison to other parts in Sri Lanka. Protecting this land is something we should do not for ourselves but for the future generations of the country. If we can create and publish a gazette with a set of guidelines that is unique to this land, I think it will be more valuable than excavating and conserving this land. This is a long-term plan. This cannot be done in 2 to 3 years. So as Most Venerable Nayaka Thero said, we must include these guidelines as well. Even if this doesn't happen under us, I believe that these things will be done according to this plan. We must conduct these activities centered around this Mahaviharaya. These plans of activities began in Anuradhapura from the time when Bandaranayaka was a minister in 1947. To this date, we haven't completed this successfully. Look at India. The Nalanda University began in the 90s. Now look at the Nalanda University. It is one of the most prestigious universities. A number of countries have joined them. Look at Pakistan. We are a Buddhist country. What are we doing? We couldn't even complete the development in the Mahaviharaya. We should be ashamed of ourselves. I have received letters saying that I should let the Department of Archaeology protect sacred Buddhist sites. I am ready to do that, but we have to find the place first. We will bring a law that includes all of this. We bring this law to come into effect in Anuradhapura. While that is happening, we will create a committee inclusive of all the relevant officials to carry out these activities. There is another part to this. There is no executive officer or administrative officer for this plan.
Following this discussion, President Ranil Wickremesinghe also visited some shrines connected to the Mahaviharaya.
Police dispersed a march held in Colombo today to commemorate the victims of Black July.
The Socialist Youth Union held a march in Colombo this afternoon in memory of the victims of Black July. The group organized the march from Hyde Park to the Vihara Mahadevi Park in Colombo. Police fired water cannons at the group near Town Hall while they were marching towards the Vihara Mahadevi Park.
A group obstructed an event organised in memory of the victims of Black July opposite the Burala Public Cemetery. There was a heavy security presence since the beginning of the event, held under the theme the 83rd Black July commemoration of the North-South Brotherhood. Our correspondent reported that a group had obstructed the event at the beginning.
මේ රටේ මියගිය මිනිසුන්ට මෙතරම් මේ රාජ්‍ය යාන්ත්‍රණය බය නම් අනාගතේ උපදින දරුවන්ට කාගේ පිරිසන්නක්ද?
We do not want another Black July in the country. We came here to light a lamp for that. You would have seen what happened here. These officers couldn't control two people. Today is a day that brings back the memories of one of the darkest days in Sri Lankan history. Today marks 40 years since Black July, a day on which Sri Lankans who had been living in peace and harmony for thousands of years were divided and pitted against each other, all for the selfish political goals of a few.
The violence that gripped Sri Lanka on a day like today 40 years ago split our society in half and changed the course of our nation forever. The violence on that day claimed the lives of many of our brothers and sisters. The destruction to property on that day was immeasurable. The events that led up to this bloodshed are written in Sri Lanka's history books. One thing that is clear is that this day of violence was not an isolated incident. This bloodshed was the result of the political decisions of Sri Lanka's post-independence leaders, which divided and shattered Sri Lanka society. These political decisions were made to serve the selfish political aspirations of a few and not for the greater good of Sri Lanka. The rulers consolidated their power. Their families' place in Sri Lanka's political sphere was assured. But what happened to the people of Sri Lanka? The people were divided. The economy was in tatters. Thousands of innocent people lost their lives. But while this incident was a direct result of the selfish political aspirations of a few, we must not forget the brave Sri Lankans who worked against this violence and bloodshed. While a few in power worked to sow the seeds of hatred, there were those who protected their fellow citizens at great risk of their own safety. The story of those who risked their lives to protect their fellow brothers and sisters amidst the chaos speaks volumes of what true Sri Lankan patriotism and brotherhood should be. Sri Lanka is a stark example of what happens to a nation divided on religious and racial grounds. The only hope for a better Sri Lanka is to move forward as one people, united in our ambition to become a developed nation.
The People's Movement for Democratic Change and the Youth Democratic Congress organized an event in Colombo today. This event was attended by members of Parliament, including Minister of Justice Vijayadasa Rajapaksa and parliamentarians M.A. Sumandiran and Mano Ganeshan.
We have two challenges before us. One challenge is how can we do right by the victims of the war that began from the Black July. An Office of Missing Persons and Office for Reparations was established. They were in operation since 2016 and 2017. Right now we are working on establishing a Truth-Seeking and Reconciliation Commission. We must establish a proper procedure after holding discussions with different communities in the country. Also, it is important that a Black July never takes place in this country again. Because of the opportunistic politics in this country, even doing something that is good for the country has become a serious challenge. You must ask President Wickremesinghe about the 13th Amendment and not me. He held a discussion with members of Tamil political parties in the north and east. He needs to hold discussions with Muslim political parties as well, because there are Muslim people in the east. That is his duty. Afterwards, he went to India and spoke with Prime Minister Modi. At the party leaders' meeting in Parliament, one of the President's coordinating secretaries told us that after the President comes back to the country, he is ready to meet with party leaders on the 26th. The opposition leader was also with me at that time. We did not respond to this. Parliament is starting from the 8th of August, and we said it would be easier to discuss this in Parliament. But all I have to say is this: President Wickremesinghe is the leader of the government. He is discussing with parties and he must inform us of what the acceptable proposal is. I think at the meeting he told Sambandhan something to the effect that if you want to stay you can stay or leave, and that he will give us what he can. He will have to tell us if it is 13 plus or 13 minus. Whenever a solution is sought for this issue, the opposition always objects. But now we have a responsible opposition leader, Sajid Premadasa. He discussed with me and said that we won't object.
The Church of Ceylon Diocese of Colombo in a statement highlights that the tragedy of July 1983 and its long-term consequences for inter-ethnic harmony and the rule of law must not be forgotten. He said, quote, "We should open our minds to new interpretations of history and teach our children history from the side of the marginalized, victimized and the poor," end quote. The statement reads, quote, "Let us make greater efforts to learn the languages that are spoken in this country, overcome communication barriers and build greater understanding, engagement and trust among all communities," end quote. The Bishop of Colombo added, quote, "We must do more to ensure the integration of all communities and create a national movement to work for the common good and national unity," end quote.
We will bring you the updates on the prevailing situation of the health sector right after this short commercial break.
News First. Main sponsor.
Durden's Hospital, dedicated to you.
There is a question of legitimacy, there is a question of whether or not they have the people's mandate.
Present government doesn't have such a mandate.
I think Sri Lankans have to get out of this kind of thinking. Because when they go to the polls for a presidential election, they always think that, if we put somebody X or Y, they'll pull the country out of the mess, we'll be okay, and so forth and so on.
But some policies are required to be quickly changed according to the changes.
By doing these emergency purchasings, because we are doing those things in a hurry, so this can affect badly to the quality of these drugs.
We have really an opportunity because Asia is growing, India is growing very, very speedily, India is growing, and we have an opportunity.
Newsline, Monday to Friday at 8:30 p.m. on TV1.
Welcome back to the news. The Ministry of Health has decided to make emergency purchases of medicines only from importers registered under the NMRA. The decision was reached considering the prevailing issues surrounding Sri Lanka's health sector and standard of medicines.
Only companies registered under the National Medicines Regulatory Authority are allowed to import medicines into Sri Lanka. The Ministry of Health said a limited number of companies are currently registered under the NMRA. However, emergency purchases can be made under an established tender procedure. Meanwhile, the bupivacaine anesthetic drug has been temporarily withdrawn from use. 4 batches of the ceftriaxone and 2 batches of propofol were also withdrawn from use.
Government Medical Officers Association revealed that everyone should work together in order to resolve the issues in the health sector.
Recently, the Director of Medical Supplies issued 2 letters banning a drug and a piece of medical equipment. The first one is aspirin because the aspirin pill produced in Sri Lanka does not contain aspirin. A person who ingests an aspirin to avoid cardiac arrest, hoping that the blood clot inside him would dissolve, but the pill doesn't have aspirin. Are we wrong for speaking about this situation to prevent it? Are we wrong for trying to get the correct aspirin pills? The Director of Medical Supplies has released another letter saying that the AV fistula catheter used are of low quality and that its use should be stopped. So are we saying this, or is it the Director of Medical Supplies Division? If the use of fistula cannulas were not stopped, more patients would have lost their lives. I am inviting the Health Secretary, Health Minister and the Director General of Medical Services to put away all conspiracies and circulars and sit down with us for a discussion so that we can find a way to solve these issues in the health sector together. In order to maintain the health service, it must be sustainable. We can see that the main reason for the health industry to be unsustainable is the unbelievable amount of profits that are being made from the medicine that we purchase. The Doctors' Union Alliance for Medical and Civil Rights stated that problems in the health sector should be resolved as soon as possible. The Health Secretary must know that if he can issue a circular to suppress government officials as soon as possible, he should also publish the plan of the Health Ministry related to the importation of medicines for the year 2024 by Monday. Otherwise, we have to assume that the people of our country will have to live with a severe shortage of medicines in the year 2024. There are media reports being published that make us feel suspicious if this bad situation is getting worse. Therefore, what we can see is that although the Health Minister, the Secretary and the Director General are extremely quick to issue letters that suppress health sector officials, they are not that quick to make administrative decisions and to prepare plans for the health sector.
The Government Medical Officers Association expressed their views on the issues surrounding the health sector of Sri Lanka.
The
minister and the officials are trying to downplay the crisis situation that we are facing. So if this is an ordinary situation, then why did they appoint a 7-member committee? Why appoint a 5-member committee? The next criteria that defines if this is a normal situation or not is the amount of emergency purchases. Then if we saw that according to the Auditor General's 2021 report regarding this purchase, there have been a little over 200 emergency purchases within the year 2021. Then in 2022, this number went over 700. So this can't be a normal situation. According to the collected data, there have been close to 250 emergency purchases so far this year. So will this number increase in the next 6 months or will it reduce? So instead of using the emergency purchase process during a real emergency, they are using it to replace the normal procurement procedure. Instead of eliminating the public's doubts in this regard and moving forward, the Ministry of Health and the authorities have chosen a different path. That is the path of oppression. They are trying to oppress the union leaders and civil activists by introducing acts and circulars to enforce this oppression. A protest was held opposite the Anuradhapura hospital demanding solutions to the issues surrounding Sri Lanka's health sector. Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri has assured that Sri Lanka has finalized a standard operating procedure in line with the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to address India's security concerns in the backdrop of a visit of a Chinese vessel last year. He was speaking to the Indian media outlet Beyond.
Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri joined an exclusive interview with Indian media outlet WION following President Ranil Wickremesinghe's visit to neighbouring India earlier this week.
A lot of conversations happened, and it's natural that India is going to talk about the security in the Indian Ocean region. India has its own set of worries, and Sri Lanka has its own set of challenges as well. Were there any assurances given by Colombo over what India has its worry regarding the presence of the Chinese research vessels in the region?
Basically, there were a conversation which centered around keeping the Indian Ocean as a peaceful region and the commitment towards it. And number two is to be sensitive to each other's security concern. In other words, as far as India is concerned, India's legitimate security concerns to be taken into consideration in whatever the decisions that we are making. So to be fair by India, India didn't ask or wanted us in any way to block any investment from any other countries or any trade with any other countries, and that's all perfectly normal because every country is doing that. But security concerns which are legitimate need to be taken into consideration. So that we have repeatedly told that the legitimate security concerns of the Indian government and people of India will not be compromised by Sri Lanka at any stage, being a responsible neighbor and also a close friend of India for generations.
Any plans to put in place that SOP, or has that SOP been put in place?
Yes, we have finalized the SOP and that SOP is in place, and we will share with all our stakeholders and the friends of the SOPs. We have worked on that over a period of time in line with the UNCLOS, UN Convention of Law of the Sea. We have developed that, and probably we will put that in place very soon.
The ever-picturesque sea of Sri Lanka, an eye-catching spectacle, is a blessing to my nation. Surrounding our mother with the protection of a father.
The Sea of Sri Lanka.
Several meetings organised by the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna were held in several parts of the island. While meetings of SLPP constituency representatives were held in several areas today, the Mavathagama Balamandala meeting of the SLPP was chaired by Parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksha.
Parliamentarians including Johnston Fernando and W.D. Veerasinghe were among those present at the Balamandala meeting held in Mavathagama this morning.
Now they say that we abandoned our ministerial positions and ran away, and that now we have come out of hiding. None of us went into hiding. We didn't resign from our positions. We were told to resign. Mahinda didn't resign on his own will. He was told to resign. Everything will be answered in the future. We are watching the actions of others. We keep quiet to safeguard all of this. Who was there? Which businessman? Who did what? If you think that we are scared and in hiding, we are not that kind of people. That is why the public loves us. The people in this government who think that the people of this country are blind and deaf are saying that we in the opposition have bankrupted the country. So they are pretending like they are trying to fix it. Even though Ranil Wickremesinghe loves the port tour to bloom, we know that it can never bloom. But Ranil Wickremesinghe has created an opportunity for it to bloom based on some short-term agreements. But it is not his wish either. He has a completely different plan. So we know exactly what will happen. That is, in the coming 7 to 8 months before next March, either the Parliament's term will end or it will be dissolved. The Minister of State for Power and Energy, D.V. Chanaka, says that a maximum retail price for fuel will be set from next month. This is applicable to all companies issuing fuel in the retail market.
මේ මාසේ ඉඳන් අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
We are hoping to use this price formula to set the maximum price in a way that it affects all companies. From this month onwards, we hope that this will lead to internal competition, where the other companies will have to compete and lower their prices. Through this, we believe that we will be able to reduce the fuel prices.
තෙල් මිලේ අඩුවක් ලබා දෙන්න හැකි වෙයි කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා.
Hundreds of Israelis have gathered in Tel Aviv to protest against Benjamin Netanyahu's new judicial reforms. We'll bring you the details right after this short commercial break.
බින්දුවටම ප්‍රතික්ෂේප කරපු සමහර දේශපාලන ප්‍රවාහයන් ආයෙනවා. කලාව නාව. ඒකේ කලාවක් තියෙනවා. ඒක කලාව. ඒ මොකද්ද? කොහොමද ඒක කියවන්නේ?
තරුණයෝ ඉල්ලුවේ සිස්ටම් චේන්ජ් එකක්. ඒක උනේ නෑනේ.
ඒක හදන්න මිනිස්සු ඉන්නව නැත්තේ නෑ.
IMF එකෙන් ණය ගත්ත හැකි. ඔව්. ආර්ථික කඩාවැටීම. මේ සංස්කෘතික කඩාවැටීම සිදු වුණාන් පස්සේ අපි කාගෙන්ද ණයට ගන්න කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙනවා.
හරි කරගෙන කාට හරි ගෙයිමක් දීලා කීයක් හරි හොයාගෙන ඉන්න නම් පුරුෂාර්ථය හැදිලා තියෙන ජීවිතේ එතනින් එහාට යගේ හියුමන් ලයිෆ් එකේ ගමනක් නෑනේ.
මිනිස්සු ප්ලෑන් කරපු ජීවිත නැති වෙලා හැමෝටම තමන්ගේ ජීවිතය අහිමි.
ප්‍රජාතන්ත්‍රවාදයේ දරිද්‍රතාවයක් කියනවා. Poverty of democracy.
බුද්ධිමය සංවාදය බ්‍රහස්පතින්දා රාත්‍රී 10:30 මාවත.
Welcome back to the news. The former Parliamentary Deputy Committee Chair and JVP Central Committee member R. Chandrasekharan expressed his views on the government leaders and the current proceedings of the Parliament in Jaffna today.
Ranil Wickremesinghe gave the Hambantota report to China in 2015. He has said that an economic centre will be established between India and Sri Lanka based in Trincomalee. They say that building a bridge between India and Sri Lanka will enable Sri Lanka to improve its economy. Our country doesn't have any production. When these doors open, the remaining economic market that we have left will also be lost. There is a geopolitical battle in the world. On one hand, there is China, and on the other hand, there is America. Then there is India. They're all engaged in a program to hunt our motherland. The one who is working for that program is none other than Ranil Wickremesinghe. He engaged in these kind of acts in the past as well. If there is anyone who has no compassion towards the people and the future of the country, that is Ranil Wickremesinghe. Similar incidents happened in the past as well. The new fortress agreement was signed in the shade of the night. The country didn't know about that. The public didn't know about that. The cabinet didn't know about that. And Parliament didn't know about that as well. Here is a president without a mandate, a president who was rejected by the people. Even if the people of this country were to beg on the streets, he wouldn't care. Ranil Wickremesinghe has engaged in low and sinful acts only to protect his image and existence.
In more local news, a meet and greet held in line with the Summer International Choral Festival organized by the Muslim Choral Ensemble was held in Colombo on Sunday.
Sunday's gathering showcased a vignette of artistic prowess of artists participating in the Summer International Choral Festival. The Summer International Choral Festival brings together vocalists and instrumentalists from diverse backgrounds to unite on one platform to present an awe-inspiring fate of cultural exchanges, fostering understanding towards an appreciation for melodies that transcend language barriers. It is to be held in Colombo from the 23rd to the 30th of July.
Leaders of farmers' organizations allege that the project being carried out to protect the banks of the Senaniga Samudra, one of the largest reservoirs in Sri Lanka, is substandard.
The Senaniga Samudra was gifted to the country on the 28th of August 1953 under the Galloya multi-purpose scheme based on a concept of the first Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, D.S. Senaniga. The Senaniga Samudra, which was built by connecting two mountains in Igniagala, has a capacity of 770,000 acre-feet and the length of the embankment is 36,000 feet. This reservoir nourishes 120,000 acres of farmland. The benefits of this reservoir is immeasurable, with its main purpose being producing hydroelectricity and supplying water to cultivate fields, with its main benefit being generating hydroelectricity and supplying water to cultivate fields. The reservoir also facilitates the freshwater fishing industry, supply water to the Ampara city and tourism industry. With the help of the World Bank, the restoration of the reservoir is currently taking place 70 years after it was constructed, while a committee of leaders of farmers' organizations have also been appointed to look into whether the construction is being done properly. They point out that this project is not up to standards. The granite used to protect the reservoir's embankment from the inner section to prevent the reservoir's embankment from being washed away by the waves is known as Ralapanava. It is often created using high-quality granite. However, what is surprising is the fact that the granite used for the construction of this Ralapanava has already been identified to be of substandard quality. Leaders of farmers' organizations point out that the granite that is of acceptable quality is placed on top of the granite that is of substandard quality to construct the Ralapanava. There are rejected stones in it. Good stones were placed on top to cover the rejected stones. They should inspect the stones and stop bringing them if they are rejected. Why are the rejected stones still being brought in? There is no supervisor here. There is no engineer. Even though a massive amount of money was spent to protect this reservoir, when we visited the site of the construction, there were no officials present. When the northeast monsoon is active, it rains continuously. When it rains, what will happen to the substandard stones under the proper quality stones? All of these will be pushed down at once and it will be completely destroyed along with the reservoir's embankment. We will not allow this kind of fraudulent activities to take place. We would like to say that companies that undertook this contract can earn all the profits that they want. We have no problem with that, but build our reservoir properly. We also questioned the project contractor who is in charge of the contract for the renovation of the reservoir. After they are brought, they are checked again. When they are checked randomly, the good ones are allowed to be used, and if they are found to be of low quality, they are rejected. The ones that are piled up there are rejected. It goes back to the supplier. But the farmers allege that stones designated as substandard have also been used to construct the Ralapanava. Even today, D.S. Senaniga is a politician who is respected by the people because he served the people well through these various development projects. It is important to protect the Senaniga Samudra because any adverse impact on the reservoir could result in immeasurable damage to the lives of the people who depend on it. To the officials in charge, for your attention before disaster strikes.
News first with the people.
Hundreds of thousands flooded the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv against the judicial plans of far-right government of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Tens of thousands of Israelis have marched into Jerusalem and more protesters have taken to the streets in Tel Aviv, aimed at blocking Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's contentious judicial overhaul plan. The protests came as more than 100 of Israel's former security chiefs signed a letter pleading with Netanyahu to hold the legislation, and thousands of additional military reservists said they would no longer report for duty in a protest against the plan. The Israeli parliament, or Knesset, is set to hold a final vote on Sunday and Monday on the bill that would limit the Supreme Court's power to void what it considers unreasonable government or ministerial decisions. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been hospitalized for an emergency procedure to receive a pacemaker ahead of a key parliamentary vote on his controversial judicial overhaul plan. Netanyahu's office said that the 73-year-old leader would be placed under sedation and that a top Deputy Justice Minister, Yariv Levin, would stand in for him.
One Russian journalist was killed while 3 others were injured near the front line in Ukraine's southeastern Zaporizhzhia region.
Russia's defense ministry said a Russian journalist has been killed near the front line in Ukraine's southeastern Zaporizhzhia region as Moscow accused Kyiv of using cluster munitions supplied by United States this month in the attack. Rostislav Zuravlev was killed and 3 other Russian journalists were wounded in a Ukrainian artillery attack. Russia's defense ministry said the other correspondents have wounds of medium severity. Russia said the journalist's death is a heinous, premeditated crime committed by Western powers and Kyiv. They also said the responsibility for the killing also lies with those who supplied Ukraine with cluster munitions. According to reports, no comment was immediately available from Ukraine on the incident.
Be the first to know about the biggest stories as they break. Subscribe to News First English News Alerts. News First, your trusted English news channel.
And that brings us to the end of this edition of Primetime News here on TV1. For the News First team, I've been Senaniga Samudra. Take care and stay safe.